So we are 7 lines from the top on page Mem Vov. The line begins with the word Vakam. We are at the end of that line. And what we are saying is that the Yichud Chochma Bina is a Yichud Ruchni, and just as in the case of Mashpia Makabel, Rabbi Talmid, as I suppose HaSeichel does not transmit the Mahuz HaSeichel. The Rab does not give him his essence, he gives him Chitzeni as a Seichel. It's a Ruchnistic type of relationship. And therefore it doesn't create Seichel by the Talmid, by the Makabel. So similarly, the Hishavus that comes from the Yichud, on the Zivur, Chochmo, Bino, Lamailo, even though there is Hishavus Malochim and Nivroim, but that Hishavus is only Hishavus Ruchni, not a real Metzias. And to this, we have a big question. That in the case of Rabbi Talmid, indeed, the Rab does not create Seichel by the Talmid. He can only understand it, he can only access the Seichel if he has his own Seichel. Whereas in this creation of Malachim ben Ibrahim Umayla, it creates a whole Mahus, a whole presence, that they have their own Seichel Amidas, Meichin Amidas. And we explained last night the emphasis on Meichin Amidas, particularly on Meichin. Meichin, in order to have Meichin, there has to be a fundamental presence that in the Nivra to be able to relate to Meichin. As we explained just very briefly, Meichin means that you know that which you're not experiencing, that which you know not by personal contact and personal experience. You know because of its truth. In order to know something because of its truth, you have to have a sense of a truth within yourself. Therefore, it's a real Metzias. And the Rebbe now continues to explain. Where do we see that the Nivroim that are created have Meichin Umidas? Shaharei. Since that, Hamalachim Yoidim Masigim Alakus. This is the ultimate of Meichin. At Malachim, they know and they actually comprehend the union of Alakus. Ukmeisha Kosu, as the Pasuk says, Bitzit Koscho Yeraneinu. Bitzit Koscho, that the Malachim sing your righteousness. Tzedek Malchus HaKadisho, the righteousness of Malchus HaKadisho, of the Holy Kingdom. Shehu Inyan, which is referring to Hasogosom, their comprehension, Bibchinas HaHa'or, the Malchus Atzilus. In the Ha'or of Malchus Atzilus, which means they comprehending him from Malchus Atzilus of the Holocaust. Uksiv, similarly it says, Rofim oimdim imaloi, that the Srofim, the Malachim, they are called Srofim. And this Srofim oimdim mimaloi, they stand mimaloi above him. What does it mean they stand above him? Shezehu, how do they stand above him? Shezehu alidei hasogosom bibchinas kodesh. The yin that they stand above him, this is as a result of their comprehension in the kodesh aspect. Okay, let's stop for a moment. As we explained yesterday, Hasogas HaSeichel, the principle of Seichel is that you know things on the basis of an overall reality and truth, not by personal experience. So here we say, they stand above him. What means they stand above him? They relate and they focus on that which is above the Malchus that reveals itself upon them. How do they stand above the Malchus that reveals upon them? This is because of Seichel, the Hasoga, that the Masik Dinyan Kodesh, that he is really above the whole thing, above Malchus and above the whole Bria. How do they relate to? How do they get access to that if that's not what Mizgala upon them? They have access to that through their Seichel, because in their Seichel they comprehend that yes, indeed, that the real truth is above that, and this is what they focus on that real truth which they comprehend in their Seichel. And again, to bring this to the final point, which it's going to discuss, but just to understand where we're up to, what we're dealing with. To bring this to final point is, in order to have that comprehension, you have to have seichel. And in order to have that kind of seichel, you have to have the sense of that kind of truth, that kind of reality, which is beyond your experience. And as we always constantly remind ourselves, that the principle of all wisdom is that there is a first being. And this first being is the truth of being. From the truth of his presence, only to him come forth. How do we get an idea of amitis himotze, of a truth of a true presence? It is because we have a true presence in our nefesh. This is what we don't experience it. What we experience is a very precarious existence, a worldly existence that is constantly changing and very volatile. So we say amitis himotze, that is because in our seichel is privy, is what to rotzen hanefesh and to the true etzem of nefesh, and we say yes, there is that kind of reality, and this is what we comprehend. And in order to have the Amcham Seichel, it has to be a real presence. And this presence, in this context, in Reimer, this is created as a result of the Yichud Chochma Bina. So it's a real creation. It's not a ha'ora. There's nothing imaginary about it. It's a real presence. V'chein kol hanivroi. Similarly, in truth, all hanivroim, all the creatures, hein tzva mailo v'hein tzva mato. The tzva mailo means the hosts from above, the malochim and the shomis, and tzva mato is the lower the creatures. Hariyesh bohem hidio v'hasogo. They have idea of hasoga. They have knowledge and hasoga and comprehension. It's important for us to understand that we have a clear demarcation line between a nefesh a yid and a goy, a non-Jew. And we say what a yid can comprehend, a goy cannot comprehend. The truth is that this simple statement is not entirely, does not describe the truth, the whole story. The goy also has seichel, and also has idea of hasoga. And the simple proof of that is that they have 7 mitzvahs. 7 mitzvahs given to them by God that are based. And how are they to relate to these mitzvahs and to know about them? They have seichel. They have seichel. Within the parameters of their existence, of all the parameters, they have seichel and they understand that there is a truth, a worldly truth, and therefore they have to behave appropriately according to that truth. And that's why they have 7 mitzvahs. So all the creatures have that hasoga at the minimum. But this minimum represents a true access to a fundamental truth. How do they have that if it is only ha'orah? The real final point we'll see now. V'harei mitziyusom. But is it not true that mitziyusom, that their presence loihoyotchilo, was not there originally? V'nizhavu me'ayin liyesh, and they came to be. They were created. They came into being me'ayin liyesh, from a state of nothing into a state of presence. Bebchinas mehuso mitzias, in the form, in the state, in the level of mehuso mitzias, of real presence. Mehayichud chochma bina, from as a result of this yichud of chochma bina, they came into being, and this being gives them a real hasoga, yidim hasoga, which, as we said, has to be based on their sensing a reality. So therefore they have a mahusa mitzias. They have a real presence. And this presence is something which is both. It is a novel presence. They've been created. But what do they get through this creation? Am I disconnected? Obviously. I don't know how I got disconnected.
Thank you. You are now entering the conference room. You will participant number 3.
Okay, I don't know how we got disconnected suddenly. All right. So how do we correlate these two principles? On the one hand, we say that the Chochma Bina, and thus the zivug between Chochma Bina, is only ha'orah, and does not create a real presence. And as we spoke all the time, that ultimately the creation, the Paltiel, is from Malchus. And here, at the same time, we're saying that the Nivroim are real creatures, and they have hasoga, in Elokus. And hasoga in Elokus, just want to reiterate and make the point clearly. We're not talking a hasoga that is based on that is fundamentally imagination. This is what people who don't understand say that our faith is blind faith. You have to accept it. God forbid, this is the furthest thing from the truth. Faith is the pshat that we actually have a sense of the truth of this thing. We're not necessarily not able to elaborate on it, to fully understand it in our seichel, in our thinking process, but the sense of it, the reality of it is definitely real to us. On a personal basis. And this is proven, attested to by the fact. We're not talking about it here, we're talking about Malachim and Neshomas, but in our case, it's proven by the fact that Yidden withstood such challenges and were not praised by it. Because this truth cannot be erased under any circumstances. So how is this correlate to the principle we say that zivug ruchni does not create a real presence, an independent presence? Acho inyan hu. However, the principle is the be'emes that in truth adeklolus his habus hazois. This his habus, this existence, overall, at the very basic level, harei ein ze dover atzmi. It is not a dover atzmi. It is not a self-contained element. Bebechinas mehusa mitzias dover ma, in a sense of a mehusa mitzias dover mamos, a tangible presence, a real presence on its own. It'll be a little bit challenging and require a little bit of a finer focus to understand this in Mahusa Mitzias Dover Mamash. They do have an access, and you have an insight of a lakus. So they have seichel, and we explain seichel means that they have access to a mamash, a true presence. But nevertheless, their own presence is not b'chinas Mahusa Mitzias Dover Mamash. What would be the difference? The Rabbi explains this a little bit more extended. Just want to explain as an introduction to what follows. There is a Rabbi Talmud, and as such, in this combination, in this relationship, the Talmud is in fact capable, as a result of the influence and the hashpah of the Rav, is in fact capable of understanding everything that the Rav is mashpiyateh. And then some. Then he can go on his own even deeper. When is the manifestation that this Talmud is a Metzias Dover Mamash? when he no longer can relate to his Rav, and he himself becomes a Rav. As we said many times, that one of the principal powers behind learning for the Rav and the Talmud, the Talmud understands everything. But what gives it reality? It is the fact that he heard it from his Rav. In order to be able to relate to this reality, he has to have a nefesh, he has to have seichel, as we discussed now. But it's not mitzi is dover mamosh. He is not in a position, he doesn't have the koyach to be, so to speak, the inventor of this event. He can fully understand. But there has to be a source. This fine difference, this is a difference. The one thing, since our time is limited, we can't go very far. The one thing that we see by Chassidus Chabad manifest in the Rebbe's Shluchim is that they can be away for decades in some kind of hick town, and they remain with the same spirit, the same power. I remember going back to Russia. My grandfather Hashem said, and there were many misnadishes, so to speak, elamisha lomdim, real rabbonim. So my Zayda said, there's one difference. He says, you put one of ours in any place, he will create an environment. He's not the environment dependent. He will create an environment. One amongst the many, he will create an environment. That is a completely different realm of being a creation, a true creation. This is being an originator. Be a double mamush. Okay, now that we have the principle. Yeah, what? Go ahead.
Did you say that when do you know that someone has become a davar, a Messiah davar, and cannot relate to his Rav anymore?
He's not dependent on his Rav. Not related to the Rav, no, that would be silly. He's not dependent on it.
So the point by Chassidus Chabad is that they're not dependent on the Rebbe. The Rebbe made them into like
they're not dependent on being in constant presence. I told you this, the story, the Belzer. Someone suggested the Belzer that he should send Shluchim out like the Lubavitcher does. So he says he's afraid they're going to be lost. So he says, well, the Lubavitchers don't get lost. So he says the Lubavitchers don't get lost because wherever they are, they're in 770. Now it's the essence goes with them. Just want to start the next thing. We have a couple minutes. Veharaya, and the proof to this claim that they are not a mitzius, mahus mitzius dover mamosh. They are not a dover atzmi. Dover atzmi means essentially a self-made element, essence. A self-made essence means that he represents an essence that is totally independent of what he is encountering for in his surrounding. He is an independent presence. We explained yesterday the difference between seichel and instinct. The proof is Shaharei, that we see that when upon them and the Malachim should shine the light of Shorshim Umkerim of their own source, Yizbatlu Mimtsiyusam Legamri, they will lose their Mitzius totally. Which means that their Mitzius as such is not a real Mitzius, even though, yes, they comprehend their Sheirish and so forth, but they don't have a standing on their own. And when the Sheirish is Nizgala, they become both. Perhaps we can say that this would be alluding to a situation where yes, one is bottled to the Rebbe, and he is in total subservience and certain obedience and so forth, follows through on the Rebbe's instruction. But in the presence of the Rebbe, he's not able to open his mouth. His battle Mitzius and Gamli doesn't have a real presence. If he cannot open his mouth, this beetle eliminates, so to speak, his personal presence. The truth is, as we're going to learn, the Nivroim were created by Malchus. Each one is a Melech in his own right, even though they fully represent the Malchus. What happened there?
One of the horses.
Huh?
Joining the show.
All right, so we will interrupt here. Huh?
That's a cliffhanger.
I'm sorry.
That's a cliffhanger.
That's a cliffhanger?
Yes.
What is it? Each what represents a separate Malchus? That's the point.
What explanation do you need?
No, I didn't catch the word. Each what represents
Each
a
person.
separate. Oh, each person. Okay, I just didn't catch that word. Okay. All right.
Mora says, "B'nei Malachim, B'nei Malachim," right?